Well, hello everybody. Excuse me, my voice is a little hoarse. I went to the Mets game the other day. Um, Welcome to Writing for Media in the summer. This is actually the first time I've actually taught this class in the summer, but I have been teaching this class or some version of this class for 18 years now. Anyway, welcome aboard. I know that taking class in the summer is never, I'll just say it right off the bat, try to be a realist here. It's never always like the most enjoyable thing in the world. Um, I am Tom Davis. I am your instructor. I am Rutgers graduate myself. I actually did take a couple summer classes myself. We'll do the best we can with what we got. We also have a very condensed period compared to what I typically do or teach, in the fall and the summer, or fall and the spring. So it's going to be a lot of moving as fast as possible. And we try to get as much. I mean, the best way to learn in this class is just to keep writing, and then the rewrite. Um, my lectures just, I do the best I can to basically kind of spice them up and, basically like try to get people engaged, that sort of thing. But the best way to really learn is just to really write. And we're going to be doing that right away. Okay. So anyway, I tape these lectures as I send a note to everybody. Everybody should have gotten already. I tape these lectures typically on the day or 2 days before I post them. Some it hasn't happened yet, but sometimes there's news that happens. Might require a little bit of adjustment and teaching, that sort of thing. But this isn't so much about a class about write about current events or something like that. This is a class about just learning how to do news writing. News writing to me is actually just another craft, another form of the craft. It's something that's actually, for a lot of people who have actually just starting to write news, it's something that actually can be hard to adjust to, because it's so different from what you're used to. So many of you are used to writing about what I did on my summer vacation, or writing some book report about something, and then having an essay and a topic sentence and a hypothesis and the body and a conclusion, which that's a big thing. We don't have conclusions in news stories. So it's very much a top-down form of writing, where the most important thing, you may have heard this already, but the most important thing has come at the top of the story, and then the rest of the story basically reports more substance on the main topic, but in the declining order of importance. Okay. um it's interesting because when social media came around, particularly Twitter and Facebook in the 2000s, it was actually, I mean, it's received a lot of criticism for like basically changing media and that sort of thing. And it has. But on the other hand, it also actually kind of also replicates what media does, and that is basically give people what they want to know as quickly as possible. Okay. So yes, there's a lot we could say about Facebook and Twitter, and like maybe some of the bad things they do. That's no question about that. But it also, like I said, also just pretty much just repeats what it just replicates the news system. Okay. There's shorter paragraphs. Like I said, the news is typically more direct and giving you what you need to know right away. The mystery is solved in the first paragraph typically, and then essentially the rest of the story essentially deconstructs what happened. Okay. All right, let me just give you a little bit of an intro here. There is as I wrote to everybody, there is I'm going to show the screen now. There is obviously a Canvas page for this. And this will contain most of everything you probably will need to know. There is also a syllabus, which I'll talk about. So let's see here. We have right here. Okay, so let's go to the home page, okay, because this is also something that's going to be unusual for me, but it's a great thing to have, is that I actually will have somebody assisting me this semester, a PhD student. But I'll get to that in a second. Anyway, so this is the home page for the Canvas portion of our course, Writing for Media, an introductory course offered by the Department of Journalism. Basically, just in this course, we're going to develop a strong foundation for writing. We're going to try to do that by July 7th, right? I mean, like I said, I'm typically used to teaching this class over a 3-month period. Now I got like a month and a half, or not even. So in this course, students will develop a strong foundation for writing and diverse media, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is my email address, which is something you really need to have. Okay, I'll get into this, but I typically communicate straight old-fashioned email. I don't typically use, okay, so this right here, the Canvas inbox. Okay, that's you know, I find that to be I find this to be a more antiquated, old-fashioned system of email that actually is kind of a pain in the butt. So I actually just would rather you just email me directly, or even like text me, which I will, I have my phone number on actually the syllabus if you need to get a hold of me or something. Okay. So also joining us this semester as a teaching assistant is Corinne Weinstein. Corinne is a PhD student in the media studies program at Rutgers and studies how stories on television shape our perceptions of cultural and social reality. Before coming to Rutgers, Corinne worked for 5 years in television research for AMC. The networks focusing on industry trends and program preference. So how she's going to assist mostly is basically, I mean, again, probably the best way to learn is really just to kind of, I play the role of editor in this assignment in this class, and you play the role of reporters. So I'm basically your boss for this class. Okay. She's gonna, and what you're gonna, like I said, I'm gonna lecture you to death. You're gonna be sick of it, the whole thing. I get that. But the best way to learn really is to just like do your work and redo your work. Okay. And then my grading will be essentially the editing of that. And what I will do is I will largely grade everything, the content, the making sure everything that you write like makes sense, it reads well, the whole thing. Corinne is going to back me up on that. She's going to actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit everything. She's going to basically edit the stories largely for what I would consider the fundamentals of writing, and that would be the grammar, the essentially the diction, the punctuation, that sort of thing, because that is something actually like it's interesting. I've taught this class so many times. It's like, and I don't blame people for this, but like I don't know what it is about the grade schools and everything, but they just don't seem to kind of like teach like they used to in terms of like punctuation and making sure that you have a full sentence with a noun and a verb, not a sentence fragment. And I feel like that's something that like where I've spent like too much time probably trying to deal with too much of let's teach everybody how to write, basic writing as opposed to teaching them how to write journalism writing. Okay, so I need somebody to basically help me with that. So she's going to do that, largely that. So when I actually send back your papers, I'll be sending you back my editing and her editing in two separate things, but basically you have to take the information from both edits and rewrite the story. Okay, unless you get an A, then you don't have to rewrite it. So all right, but then even if you get an A, there'll probably be like some important information that you'll need to know in terms of like maybe no story's ever like completely perfect, right? So there's probably maybe some things you actually should look at anyway, just to make sure you don't repeat the mistakes. And then this is a class that's actually graded on progress, and I really care more about what happens in your last few assignments than you do in your first couple assignments, because again, news writing is not something that's taught when you're young. It's something that's actually like has to be taught over time, and it doesn't actually, it's a different kind of writing. So it's a lot of people coming into this class, they actually like learn from the ground up. So I'm really like almost like kind of going from 0 to 10 as opposed to like 5 to 10 in this class. So anyway, and by the way, I'm taping this on Monday. It's a beautiful day on Monday. I hope you guys are enjoying your Memorial Day weekend, or I should say by the time you'll see this, enjoyed your Memorial Day weekend. So I know it's also a very solemn occasion. Just remember that too. My father-in-law, I never met, died in Vietnam. So, we actually this is actually a very important, obviously, weekend in my family. So, all right. Anyway, so this is again the Canvas page. And when I communicate with you guys, I actually like almost in an OCD way, make sure you get the information. So, when I post lectures, again, I actually have already written you guys, but it'll be typically on Monday, as opposed to my fall and the spring classes, when I post once a week. This class, because it's so condensed and fast, I post twice a week. So I'll be posting on Mondays and Fridays, okay? And giving out assignments either twice weekly or once weekly, okay? As we get later in the semester, actually be more once weekly. The only exception to that rule, again, is that this will be getting this on Tuesday because of the holiday weekend. So, but anyway, when I actually post these lectures, or when I actually really get you information you need to know, I will post it in the announcements. Okay. And I mean, there's like some old actually, I meant to put this in student view. I'm sorry. So, so you may actually I don't know if you can actually see those old. You'll see this is actually the welcome to class. Actually, oh, I'm sorry. Did I actually? This is an old one. So I meant to actually post this. But anyway, actually, what I do is I typically post in the announcements section. These are old announcements from old classes. And then actually, contradictory to what I said before, I actually do send something through the Canvas inbox in the email. Okay. So I repeat the same message, and then I actually send another one through regular email. And then I also post lectures under the assignment portion. And actually, there are some listed already. And I'll get into that, but actually, there is reading in this class, and I'll talk about that. So you can see that actually those are all posted already for the entire semester. I put due dates on those because they're basically weekly. I will get into what that means, but I actually, just to kind of get a jump on things, I actually did post the very first assignment, which is actually due Friday. I figured maybe people would want to see that and and want to know what's going on, but I'll talk about that in a bit. Okay. All right. So let's just go. And then there's the module section. Basically, this provides essentially a guide of what we're going to be doing each week or semi-week. Okay. And of course, we have course introduction. It's also outlined in the syllabus. And then it's week 1, May 31st. Week 1, June 3rd. That's Friday. Then week 2, June 6th, and the following Friday. And then, like I said, it's twice a week up until July 4th week, when basically we have our major assignment final, which we'll talk about that. That's assignment that counts a lot. But basically, first we have the course introduction. And then essentially your reading assignment actually is to read by June 6th, chapters 3, 4, and 11. Okay, in the textbook, which I'll go back to. Got to make sure that you have the textbook. It is Writing and Reporting for Media, 12th edition. I actually was able to manage to find this through something called Chegg online. If you want to know, it's chegg.com reader. If you want to try that. It was actually a little expensive that way, but you can get it through Amazon if you want to try that. It should be cheaper. And of course, also the Associated Press style guide. Do not buy the workbook. There's actually a workbook that goes with the main book. If you were told to do that by somebody, don't do it. I don't use it. Okay. So please don't do it. All right. I give out my own assignments in this class. All right. There's also assignments that are actually in the textbook itself. Please ignore those. Okay. If you want to know what's going on in terms of assignments, just go to the assignments section on Canvas. And of course, I will also message you and let you know. Okay. All right. So let's go to the modules now. Okay. So yes, those are your first 2 assignments, both due by Friday. Sorry, not Friday. I'm sorry. The reading assignments are actually weekly. I apologize for that correction. So this is due in a week, 3, 4, and 11. Okay. This deals with the very basics of writing and why we do what we do essentially. And I go over it each week essentially. Okay. Anyway, so then your first assignment, a profile of someone you know. Okay. But what I'll do is I'll have you guys actually go over this reading first, and then I will talk a little bit about it in this class, but then not so this class doesn't go on forever. I will talk more about it next when the assignment is actually due, the reading assignments. And again, again, it's weird. I actually give out these reading assignments and I actually don't grade you on them. Okay. It is weird. That you're probably used to having something else, because people do, obviously teachers do the opposite of that. But to me, the important thing is actual writing. Okay. I actually just I treat you guys like adults here. I mean, I expect you guys to actually read this, and I can tell actually, like, if you haven't been reading these chapters, because it actually kind of comes out in your writing. The book is really actually supposed to really just supplement what I do. Okay. And just kind of reinforce what I do as far as I'm concerned. It's not supposed to replace or do something in addition to what I do. Okay. So that's why I don't test you specifically on the reading. Okay. All right. All right. So let's go to the course introduction. So, during the first class, we start by introducing ourselves and outlining the expectations for the course. This will include a review of the syllabus as well as an orientation for the class. Okay. So that's what we do in this class essentially, is that we just basically first I'll just try to orient you on what's going on. Okay. Actually, what I'll probably do is I'll probably actually go over the reading mostly in actually the next class, which is actually going to be on Fridays. So next lecture. So if I said Monday earlier, a correction, I meant Friday. Okay. All right. So what we got here. All right. So I think this might be a good time to go over the syllabus. I'm actually just going to actually just start talking about basically what's in the syllabus and what's expected, the guidelines, that sort of thing. I will go over to essentially the rubric too, which actually I include as part of the modules. In a little bit later lecture. Okay. But first, I just really want to get you guys off to writing first. Okay. All right. And by the way, there's the book. Okay. So let's go to the syllabus. All right. So this is actually like I said, there is actually a syllabus section of the Canvas site if you want to actually look at it. Okay. All right. So updates to the site 9 a.m. Monday or Friday, except for this week, actually, which is actually, so you'll get something by 9 a.m. Monday or Friday, except for this week, which will be Tuesday or Friday. Okay. So again, like we have the catalog description, fundamentals of writing across media platforms, all platforms. So it basically means not just actually like just writing for a newspaper or something like that, or a news organization or a news site, but also just, TV, broadcast, all that, because they're all kind of related. They all kind of follow a very similar format. It's very top down, very much you have what you call the lead, which is the first paragraph of the story, identifies what the story is about. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that later. Writing for Media is an introductory level course, writing course for students in the Journalism Media Studies program. So this is the class where you're supposed to really learn how to write. Okay, so basically, I have the rules for grammar, which, like I said, I'm going to have actually Corinne actually largely deal with. I will deal with it too, and also she's going to deal with the Associated Press style, which is actually the book, the Associated Press style book, when you get it, actually basically what it does is it actually kind of does what a dictionary essentially would do, but more. It basically gives you the idea that like how like certain words should be abbreviated and phrased and that sort of thing. Things like military or police ranks, how they should be abbreviated. Serves as a guideline, because basically what news tries to do is it's the most popular form of literature. Okay. Yes, it's a form of literature. Okay. So what it does is it essentially, but I hate to make this comparison, but I often compare it to essentially like what McDonald's does. Okay. I mean, it's a great art. Okay. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean to compare it to McDonald's like it's some sort of a cheap food or something, but basically the thing that people really like about their news is they want to kind of present it in a way that everybody can understand. Okay. And actually that's why they say that actually news should be written essentially at a fourth grade level. And that may sound like, what do you mean fourth grade? And you got to read like, in big, like pencil or something like that with big letters. No, it means that basically you should be able to write in a way as like people from fourth grade on up should be able to read it. I mean, other news organizations, I refer to the Times a lot in this course, New York Times, and that's actually more like a seventh grade level on up. Okay. But basically, you have to understand that, like, probably all of you did like a current event project when you were like in third or fourth grade or something. I mean, everybody everybody wants people to know what the hell's going on in the world, especially like what's been going on recently with these horrific tragedies, the school shootings, everything. We want people to know. I mean, they've been telling my daughter, who's actually in high school, they've been telling her like, never get complacent, never accept what's going on in the world as normal. And the only way to like get people to understand that what's is to actually make sure that they can understand what they're reading. Okay. So yes, some of you might come in here with like, I always tell people, don't swallow a thesaurus. Don't feel like you have to write big words or something like that to impress me or something like that. And actually, it's very much a simplistic form of writing. Okay. Um, and being simple is better. Okay. So keep it simple, stupid, as they say, right? KISS. So basically be able to, and then it's not just like grade levels or anything like that. It's like there's people with different intellectual levels, I have to say, right? So we have to make sure that like everybody of every intellectual level can understand what you're reading, what you're writing. Okay. So anyway, the Associated Press style book also provides a sense of consistency. So people feel like when they actually go to a different town or whatever, that they can identify like what the hell they're writing about, because it's basically the same everywhere in terms of like maybe how do you abbreviate something. That's particularly important things like I said, like the ranks of police officers, but also like state abbreviations. The Associated Press style book doesn't typically use like the typical postal code for like postal abbreviations for states. Okay. So there's stuff like that you really, they actually typically use like common language for like how people typically see like abbreviations of things so that people can understand what they are. So that's why it's important to know what that is, what the Associated Press style is. Okay. And Corinne will be looking for that too. Okay. Okay. So yes, I mean, I already told you guys about, you know, you know, I have actually, like it says, course learning objectives, identify and characterize different forms of media, research, write, edit, diverse forms. I mean, it's basically all, but it's all about writing the same news story, which is, again, very much a top-down science. Writing clearly and accurate with focus. I have essentially three tenets, I guess you could say, and that is being accurate, okay, and focused, and clear, okay. Accuracy, focus, and clarity, or accuracy. So anyway, I it's so, I mean, it's so much more important to be right than fast. I know in today's 24/7 media, it's actually like everything is fast, fast, fast. Try to get it out as fast as possible. But basically, I mean, a lot of times that happens at the sacrifice of accuracy and getting things right. And we've seen those organizations do that. They feel like they have to go way too fast to get something out. No, that's not good. So you have to basically really just make sure that you're right. Okay. But speed is also important too, because you want to get beaten on things. I mean, it's also part of the credibility of an organization that they're able to get the information and get it out. Okay. Focus, basically having a story that basically makes sense from top to bottom, but also it's really important to have a story essentially that's like really focused on one specific topic. So many times that's like one of the hardest things in this class is like people will get information for a story, but they'll write in about so many different things all at once. And it'll basically just like too much information for the reader to kind of comprehend and understand. You have to really kind of stay focused on one specific topic and stay from top to bottom. Okay. And also the importance of actually focusing on what's unique and new. Okay. News is actually, the word news is actually the plural of the word new. In case you never knew that. How about that? It's like, I mean, how could you, I mean, what's funny is actually, I didn't really know that until about 20 years ago. You can believe that. But yes, that is actually what it's about. It's about reporting about what's new as possible, but also trying to get to this close to the truth as possible. Okay. And staying focused on that. Okay. And staying clear. Okay. Making sure that you're writing in simple declarative sentences. I mean, they could have extra clauses and that sort of thing, but so many times I have people who try to write a little bit like too much like Shakespeare. So don't feel like you're writing like a drama play or something like that. You're writing show you a story to try to get information to people as quickly as possible. Okay. Even if you're writing a feature story, it's kind of similar that way. Okay. Um, there's so much that's different. And actually, I'm going to actually like show you something a little bit here. Let's show a little bit about like the news here. There's an author that one of my favorite authors was actually a sports author, but his name is Roger Angel. And I mean, this is book form writing right here. We essentially have like long paragraphs. This is a book called Five Seasons about baseball that happened like 50 years ago, 40 years ago. And he was very, you see, the paragraphs are very long and they're very literal. And news, I always say that like news is actually more about the people who are actually standing on the train going to work and trying to get their news as fast as possible. A book, or even like more like feature writing, is for that person who has time to actually go on the train on the weekend and sit and read and wait. So that's the big difference in crafts here. Well, I'm teaching you the form of writing for the person trying to get into the city as quickly as possible. Okay. Um, you know, this was actually a story about the 1975 World Series, which is between the Boston Red Sox and Cincinnati Reds. They had a character by the name of Bill Lee, who was a very kind of like intriguing, kind of like unique individual. Bill Lee is talkative and engaging fellow who will discourse in lively fashion on almost any subject, including zero population growth, Zen Buddhism, compulsory busing, urban planning, acupuncture, and baseball. During the formal post-game press interview, this was after the fourth game of the series, a reporter put up his hand and said, "Bill, how would you characterize the World Series so far?" 200 pencils poised. See the paragraph change there? It actually adds some dramatic effect. Tied, Lee said. So that's actually like it's actually there's actually something journalistic about that in a way, because it actually like kind of reports news in a dramatic fashion, but it's also very bookish because it's actually kind of, this is a story that was written like months or maybe even a year after the maybe like a month after the actual series actually happened. So it actually had the benefit of time. What I'm looking for in this class is more something like this. Those of you who follow basketball, and I'm going to use Boston again. Boston Celtics beat Miami Heat in Game 7 for a trip to the NBA Finals. Okay. Actually, this is a bit of a really long lead, but basically, I'm just kind of looking for. Actually, let me go to a better one actually, because the Times actually kind of they get a little bit bookish, but I'm looking for something that just basically kind of reports the score. Okay. Boston Celtics beat Miami Heat. So when I actually like able to look at maybe if I'm not really, maybe if I'm out, maybe I don't want to know what the score is. Maybe I don't keep it up on my phone. Actually, I think this is their original story on it. Oh, no, it's not. I guess what they did was they did it like an update. They had a different lead at first, and my computer's going slow. We'll be running into that every so often. Here we go. Actually, CNN's better. Okay. All right. So Boston Celtics secured a nerve-wracking 196 Game 7 victory over Miami Heat, reached the NBA Finals for the first time in 12 years. I'm looking for more like this, okay, in your story. Something that basically just kind of reports the news right away, okay? And basically, again, reveals the big mystery at the top, okay? And then it gets into what, once this essentially is like, what I provide in this class essentially is, like, first I'll provide you essentially what I call the exoskeleton of a news story. Then I provide like essentially the essential skeleton of the story, how it's written. Okay. This essentially is the exoskeleton. Essentially every story essentially starts with a lead. Okay. It basically reports what the story is about. Okay. Okay. And why I should care a little bit. Okay. And the rest of the story kind of gets into the answers these questions: who, why, what, where. I mean, we try to answer some of those questions in the lead, the first couple paragraphs, but how, okay, but they're really kind of more digested actually as we go along in the story, okay? And your first story actually is going to be about, you're going to actually interview somebody and write a profile on them, write a story about who they are and what they're about and that sort of thing, okay? So that story, essentially the lead, I'm looking for essentially as a one paragraph lead that basically identifies a person, oops, okay, and what makes them unique. What about that? In other words, what's the story about? What about them? Okay, why I should care, okay? And then the rest of the story basically kind of deconstructs that. It gets into like, what makes that person unique? Is there something about them that actually like essentially I know this is actually a problem that like people run into, say like, well, this person's not unique. Well, there's always something unique about that person, and I'll go over that a little bit later. But essentially, there's always something about somebody, whether like, they're working like two jobs or something like that to like get through school or something like that, that might be a little more unique than what somebody else does. Okay. And let's go back to the syllabus. I don't want to jump too much off course because that is something I want to go over later. All right. So anyway, the book, I told you about the book. Here's how the grading breaks down. In class participation. How do you have that with a a class that's asynchronous? Okay. Well, one of the things I do in this class is actually I have discussions. I have discussion points that I post for stories that we do, and I expect participation in that. Okay. And I have to do that because, like, we're still dealing a little bit with like COVID, I guess. So it's like, I mean, people are still kind of limiting contact with each other, that sort of thing. So there is a little bit of that. We're always asynchronous, so it's not like we can like talk to each other in class and interview each other or something, which is something I typically would always do in this class when I taught it in person. But the other thing is also that it's actually like helpful for people to actually like have. I'm going to ask you guys to not only put your reporter hat on, but also put your man or woman on the street hat on for these stories, basically, and basically like allow yourself to be interviewed for these stories. So we might actually like bring up a topic or something like that, and I'll ask you to and you'll be writing about it. And basically, what I'll do is I'll post a discussion point on it, and I'll ask you to actually like, actually answer that question and provide information for the discussion. Okay. Anyway, so that's like one way I look at it. Another way I look at it is I want you guys to actually do things like turn in assignments on time, which actually, I mean, that's also part of the grading itself. But I want to make sure that you do that you're actually engaged in the class in terms of like producing your assignments and that sort of thing. So that's another thing I look at when I do like class participation. Another thing is I also like it when people actually do ask questions. So, if you're doing stories and you're really not like really engaging, or even if you're like getting like B+ on your assignments or something like that, but you probably should be getting an A. And maybe if you ask like more questions or something like that, you probably would be getting an A. That's like one of the things I might be looking at. Also, like I have everybody do rewrites on their assignments, as I mentioned before. And if you do stuff like you get like I've had people like get B's on their assignments and not rewrite them to get an A, you know. And I'm like, why? Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you shoot for the A? I can be an easy A, to be honest with you. Okay. So why not go try a little harder and just like take that rewrite period and write for a higher grade? So that's another thing I take into consideration. Okay. Key writing assignments. Actually, I plan to give out 6. Okay. So that's 70% of your grade overall. And I will talk a little bit more about how each assignment will essentially break down here. But anyway, they'll be announced on Canvas. Again, the reading assignments are actually not essentially part of the grading. I just like care if you're actually reading and you're actually like supplementing your work with your reading. Okay. So, I don't want to like check on that, but your grades on your reading assignments actually like matter, obviously, and they're all comprised of 70% of your overall grade. Okay. And then like I said, the last couple of assignments actually count more. And in a later lecture, I will actually talk a little bit more about what that means. Okay. But again, I grade on progress. Because a lot of people come in here again, like not knowing the craft at all. So it's really important that like, I think it's really important to know like how you're doing when you're leaving the class as opposed to when you're entering the class. Okay. I talked about participation, what that means. I also like care if like, if you're like, if you're late on an assignment or something like that, you really should like, you really like, and I really like, don't want a lot of excuses for this. Okay. But, deadlines matter. Okay. So, I want you to like get this stuff in. If you have an issue with that or something, okay, you should let me know. Okay. I also want people to actually like look at the lectures. I've had problems with people like that. I know these lectures can go on and on and on, and I can already tell them what been going on and on already. So I probably won't even really talk about the reading in this, the reading assignment. I'll probably talk about the next class, but I want you guys to actually watch the lectures. Okay. All right. Because that's extremely important to know for your writing assignments. Okay. All right. So let's get a little bit to the grading policies, like late submissions. So, deadlines matter in journalism. Okay. I mean, a long time ago, they really mattered because like, if people were like late on their assignments, it would hold up the whole production, and actually newspapers actually lose money because like because a few people would actually not get their stories in on time, and that sort of thing. And then like everything would be slow. The trucks would get out a little bit later and the whole thing. So that was a whole deal. Well, now it matters in terms of like more of like credibility standpoint. Now, again, like it's much more important, extremely more important to be right and fast. Okay. But, if you're not actually like making deadline when you can easily do that, then, your news organization suffers as a result because you do have competition you have to worry about. And you don't want to be beaten. So that really matters. Okay. Anyway, first drafts. So basically what I do is I have essentially this. Again, I have essentially, actually, let me see, make sure that actually I went over this before. What I typically do is, and I'm sorry, I didn't actually do my grading scale. Okay. So an A grade will be awarded to assignment that fulfills both the assignment and shows a lot of original thought. Then there's B plus B, C, C plus. And then, I actually typically don't give out a D or an F on the first draft. What I do is I give out an R. Okay. Receive an R for that assignment. Okay. And that means that basically you have to rewrite it. Okay. All right. And, actually okay. Anyway, that means you have to rewrite if you get an R. Okay. That means basically along the lines of like, I didn't really understand the assignment. I didn't really understand what you were writing. It really needs to be reworked from top to bottom. Okay. So anyway, so that's what you should know about the R. Okay. But if you get like a C plus or a C or a B plus or a B, you actually still can rewrite it. Okay. You can rewrite it to a higher grade. And there's a lot of times I've had people who have gotten R's and ended up getting an A on the assignment because they've just done a total turnabout. I've had people who have actually like, who have done, who have of course got, the C plus or the C or whatever and rewritten it to maybe a B, but also maybe even an A. So you really should know that I allow for rewrites and assignments because that's what we do in the news organizations. Okay. But if you submit it late, that's already troubling. What I typically do is I give you essentially what is a 24-hour grace period. But if it comes within that 24-hour grace period, the assignment, you ultimately get like half a grade lower on the assignment. Okay. You gotta get it on time. If it comes in after that 24-hour grace period, then it's an F. Okay. I mean, it has to come in. Okay. I mean, if you have an issue or something like that going on in your life or something like that, just you gotta like email me, let me know, whatever. Okay. All right. That's all there is to it. Okay. But yeah, that's typically how it's done. And then, these are the different things. This is also on Canvas, the different like portions of the class we're going to be going over. This is the course introduction, writing basics, basically that's where I get a little bit more specific about like how to write the story, EP style, a little bit more specific about what the story should look like, like how do we connect with people, that sort of thing. Basic rules of grammar, that sort of thing, try to get knocked out of the way. Then more about the news writing structure. I mean, it's theory about the writing basics, which actually deals more with actually just like why we do what we do. I give a little bit of a history lesson of like how news came about. Okay. But then the structure actually deals more with like the specific actual writing structure and what I look for in terms of like it's essentially a formula for writing a news story. Okay. Then we get into the meteor stuff. I mean, basically public relations is such a big part of news. It's where news people actually get their information now. I mean, largely because everything moves so quickly and fast. So there's that. And actually, we even do an assignment on those lines. I actually always tell people that the first half of the semester actually deals more with the writing end of things and make sure you got that down. The second half deals more with the reporting end of things and digging in and getting information, that sort of thing. So we deal with like media ethics, so like, how do you get information, sourcing, how do you obtain that information when it's the correct way what is the correct way of obtaining that information, what information you can actually use. And then we have this essentially has been required for the last few years in writing for media is the major assignments, the final assignment. We talk about that and preview that. And I'm sorry, I skipped over one other thing. There is actually feature journalism, where it's actually not as timely, it's not as quickly written as it typically is, but it still is like a story that has like a new style to it. It's just that it's actually has more of an engaging style. They call it writing to be read kind of format. Okay. Closer to the book form of writing than what we're typically done. Okay. So anyway, so that's that's the deal with that. Okay. All right. So that's basically like what we'll be going over. Okay. Okay. So again, you have to read in the book chapters 3, 4, and 11. I think this is what I said, right? So basically, like, this chapter deals with, like, again, this is chapter 3. I'm not going to go over too much of this right now, but just basically talks a little bit more about the, why it's important to be simplistic in your writing, that sort of thing. And just so you know, by the way, I typically what I do is I typically give, when I actually have a due date and assignment, and the due date for your first assignment, which again, I'll go over in a little bit, is actually gonna be this Friday, but the end of the day on Friday, like midnight essentially. So when I actually post a lecture on Friday, you'll actually will have, you'll actually like have time to actually look at that lecture, and actually like that'll provide additional information to help you with that assignment, which will be due that day. Okay. So just make sure you look at these lectures, you try to look at them as quickly as possible. Okay. Again, this is like very much like kind of what it does is, don't worry about those quizzes. It basically shows like how sentences can be written, and saying more with less. Okay. Not writing in a passive voice. We write in an active voice in this class, which means that the noun comes before the verb. Tom Davis moved to Metuchen 20 years ago, that sort of thing. As opposed to the moving of Tom Davis took place 20 years ago. Okay. We write in a very declarative, because that's basically, news writing is actually very much like a conversational form of writing. That's how people talk. I just said it right there. That's how people talk. People talk. That's how we write in this class, is the noun and then the verb. Okay. Okay. And then let's see. And then chapter 4, the language of news, it deals a little bit more about like the importance of like making sure that you have, sentences that are like, direct, and then that the words that you use are simple, but also, they're effective words that basically can connect with people. You don't again, go into a thesaurus. We see we have active voice versus passive voice. The batter hit the ball was hit by the batter. That's a very powerful form of writing, is the active voice. Okay. Okay. And then chapter 11, you go down here, basically gives you some tips on basically how to interview. Okay. And I always tell people interviewing is interesting, because basically what you do is you have to, it could be a very awkward style of actually like having a conversation with people. It's almost what I would compare it to, like essentially as a job interview. And like I've had people ask me all the time, like, how do you start this? How do you start an interview? How do you get that going? Even I'm asking you guys to interview your family or whatever, it can still be a little bit awkward. Okay. Well, you know what, actually, like I said, it's very much like a job interview. And what you need to really do is you really need to basically just kind of, I always say it's like a kind of a macro to micro process. You start with the big questions, like the general big questions, like who are you, what's your name, what do you do, that sort of thing. And then once you do that a little bit, you do a little bit of a fishing expedition, very general basic questions, and then what you have to do is, they call it reporter radar. Sometime during that course of questioning, you hope that maybe like you come across that one unique thing about them that kind of separates them from other people. Okay. And then when that happens, that's when that's when the interviewing kind of turns on a dime, and you should actually go to micro. You should actually really narrowly focus your questioning on that actual unique thing. Okay. So that's basically how the interview process goes. So it actually does typically start in kind of like an awkward job interview kind of way. And yes, you should actually be prepared for the interview. I mean, it doesn't, it's good to also like do some maybe like research on that person beforehand. And that's another reason why I have people, I'm breaking journalism rules here by having people interview with their family members, stuff like that. But given this whole situation with asynchronous, a lot of people are kind of stuck in their houses or whatever, I'm trying to give people a bit of a break. Okay. So maybe it'd be good to interview somebody so maybe you'll have some what they call institutional knowledge already, so maybe you can get through that whole macro process a little quicker. All right. So, all right. So let's go to the assignments. And also, just so you know, all the assignments are submitted actually on Canvas. Okay. I used to do this a little bit differently, but now it's all on Canvas. Okay. And they'll be typically posted like this. All right. So upcoming assignments. So profile on somebody you know. Okay. Please interview somebody you know, can be a family member. And typically I'm going to ask for stories that are 500, 800 words, which, and please put it on Microsoft Word. That's actually another thing. I put that in the syllabus. Everything's on Microsoft Word. I've said this a million times, but then people still submit things like PDFs and stuff like that. Please, Microsoft Word. Okay. Everybody should have that. Okay. If you have a problem with that, let me know. But that's basically, it's like 500, 800 words, essentially is like a page and a half double spaced. Okay. So that sort of thing. Okay. And I do all the grading actually, and then Corinne will be doing this too, the grading actually on the actual, um, um, you know, Microsoft Word doc itself that I'll send back to you. And, this is the exoskeleton essentially of, I'm going to give you essentially as a way to kind of like start things off here. Lead, what is the story about? Why do I care? One or two sentences. What is the story about? More depth and details. Okay. Basically, what you do is you basically write the story about the person and why do I care? And what makes that person unique. And then you go into a little bit more depths of details, basically trying to explain by paragraph why that person's unique and why you should care. Okay. You just basically try to expound on more details on that. Okay. Don't like shift direction into like another area about that person that's not identified in your lead. Okay. That's like a typical path that people follow. That basically makes the story disjointed and confusing and unfocused. Okay. You want to focus on that one thing. Like again, it doesn't necessarily have to be something where like maybe they climb Mount Everest. Okay. I mean, it could be something like something that's even relatable, something where maybe like they're working like two jobs to get themselves through school or something like that. And how do they do that? I mean, that's not necessarily typically unique, but it is unique in terms of like, not everybody's like working their ass off as much as this person maybe like to get through school or something, or maybe they're working two jobs to get through school or something like that, or maybe they're dealing with issues with family, which I know gets a little personal or something like that, but they're trying to get through and that sort of thing. So anyway, so yeah, you want to basically try to identify that in the first paragraph. Okay. I mean, actually, probably one of the best places to look for that, and I hate to say that, it's actually a little bit morbid, but obituaries kind of work that way. Okay. Where basically they actually essentially identify, and actually a lot of, I hate to bring the obituaries, but because it could be a little depressing, but basically that's essentially what those stories do. Essentially, is they, this guy Ronnie Hawkins, who used to be, I guess, a member of the band that called the band. And what they do is they actually, in the lead, they identify the person and like what made that person unique. Ronnie Hawkins, who combined a gregarious stage presence of natural showman and a commitment to turbocharged rockabilly music and write a career, died on Sunday. Basically, to get a little bit of the details about like what happened with the death, and then like who he was, what he was about, what made him unique. Okay, so there's that. Okay, you can see the paragraphs, by the way, are typically one or two sentences, and that's it. And that's done because that's typically how a conversation goes. There's usually like a paragraph, basically identifies what you need to know. Then there's like a space, basically gives people a chance to breathe. Okay. And then and there's another paragraph. Okay. It gives some more detail, usually one or two sentences, gives people a chance to breathe and pause. And that's done largely because actually, again, that's how a conversation, when we talk, it's not, if it's everything's all kind of together and stuck together, the paragraphs are like really long. That's actually essentially a ramble. And then you tend to tune out. You want an opportunity to kind of like stop and think about what's being said. Okay. So yeah, so that's basically what you want to look for there. Is basically making sure that you have, paragraphs that basically like, are punchy and basically give people the information you need to know, but then you move on to the next paragraph and make another point that's important about that person or something. Okay. Maybe a little more detail, that sort of thing, that helps explain what the lead is about. Okay. All right. So anyway, so yes, so that is your very first assignment. It is due on Friday. Okay. So anyway, and then what I'll do is after that first story is you get that story in, you submit it through Canvas. I will edit those stories as quickly as possible, probably as soon as this weekend. And then I will actually then post a rewrite opportunity. Okay. And again, everybody, typically on the first assignment, just so you know, everybody has to rewrite. Okay. That's just the way it is. Like nobody's perfect. I very rarely have had an A on the very first draft. Okay. So you should know that. Okay. So don't feel like, oh my God, he doesn't like my writing, this sort of thing. Don't think that way, okay? You're just gonna, it's all learning, it's all part of the learning process here, okay? All right, guys, so that's it. And I'll be posting this, like I said, on YouTube, as I've said before. And please read this, and you'll be getting like several alerts that this will be posted. All right. So anyway, let me know if you need any help. And again, my my phone number is also, if you need to like text me, whatever, that's on the syllabus, 732-395-8956. Thanks a lot, guys, and I'll be talking to you on Friday again.